I think Pro's right. I think there is a lot of panic right now at Disney because there's a lot riding on this movie. If this Star Wars movie turns out to be a complete disaster, which nothing at this point says it will be anything other than that. But if this thing turns out to be a complete disaster, forget the fact that, yeah, Disney did another major movie where they lost $150, $200 million on. It's another of the Marvels. It's the fact that, like you said, Pro, correctly, there had been a Star Wars movie that's been put into pre-production now for 8 years until now. By the time it comes out, you won't have a Star Wars movie in the theaters for 7 years or so between the rise of Palpatine and this thing. If this thing dies, that's it. There's really no recovery for them. The stuff on Disney Plus is not doing that great. We've talked about before, Disney liked to brag about, 14 million people globally watched the premiere episode of Ahsoka. That's really not that big a number. That's half of what House of the Dragon did in the U.S. alone.
This is like Disney trying to reassert its dominance at the Kentucky Derby with a horse with no legs, hoping it will flatulate itself around the track. There is no good strategy for winning here.
As I brought up before, for the anime fans out there, the season finale, the season 3 finale of the Swordsmith Village arc for Demon Slayer, which is the biggest anime that's ever come out of Japan, 23 million viewers for that season finale in Japan alone. So, I mean, when you put these numbers out, is 14 million good? Yeah, it's good. That's a fine number for any show to get that kind of viewers. But is it Star Wars worthy? Is it $250 million worthy? Especially when Star Wars is already in the desperate situation that it is. No, it's really not that good. And it's so good that they still haven't committed to making a second season of it yet. Let that sink in. Rosario Dawson comments from earlier this week about that.
That's Dave Filoni's baby. If Dave Filoni can't make his baby get a second season, they're in trubs.
Yeah, I mean, all they have to do is come out and say, "Oh yeah, there's definitely going to be a second season." We don't know where it's going to land on the slate thanks to the actors and writers strike. We're backed up, we're delayed, but we have committed to making a second season of Ahsoka. It's going to happen. It may be 2026 before we see it, 2027. You could say that. They haven't said anything. It's been crickets. So you have to ask yourself, what are they really doing right now? What are they really looking at? Because apart from what they already have in the pipeline between Skeleton Crew, which nobody seems really clear on what the hell that's going to be, except that it's got Jude Law in it. That's probably the only draw for the show. And then, of course, you've got The Acolyte. Oh, I can't wait for that.
Honestly, neither can I. That's going to be so. We're going to have so much fun with it, tearing that apart. I'm already itching for the videos to make. Do we know approximately when it's going to come out? Like what part of the year? Like
they
spring,
haven't.
Fall.
I think it's probably going to be late summer because I think Skeleton Crew is due to be released before that. And I think we'll probably exactly. I think we'll see The Acolyte maybe like the Ahsoka slot, maybe around August or something like that. But that's Ron. That's the one that Leslie Headland we were talking about. I think that was coming up earlier in the show. But that's the one that Leslie Headland was the showrunner for, was The Acolyte. So that's the Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein related. Disney could have some fun with this if some bad news starts coming out. It's not like they didn't know going in who she was. I mean, that was the first thing everybody said. As soon as Leslie Headland was booked as the showrunner for that, it was like,
don't you think that she's protected? She's like, we couldn't save poor Jeffrey, but let's take care of or poor Harvey. Let's take care of his assistant.
You all ought to go pull up the resume of Leslie Headland and look at the fantastic works that she had that warranted her being given a Star Wars show out of the blue. You ought to go look and see. Wait a minute. There's no way she was hired for other reasons.
Charmaine Obaid Chinoy has more of a resume than Leslie Headland. Let that sink in.
Have you got? You ought to show it to them, folks. You just wouldn't believe it. If you wonder why this woman was hired, well, we're going to bring it out soon. And yes, let's see. Disney has until the 21st to sweat it out over that one.
Yeah. So I had this Forbes article up. I just kind of want to pull up some of this because, again, this is just kind of gives you the idea. It's not just other YouTubers out there, right? It's not just YouTube Wars. This is in the financial publications. This is why I bring these up because, again, we talk about, or most people on YouTube, Hollywood, they're all insular, right? They're very It's a very incestuous community. They're all reading their own stuff. I like to look at the financial trades to see what they're saying because, again, you're getting a lot of the same things out there, but it's hitting a very different audience, right? So this is what a lot of major Disney investors and things are seeing. When they see a situation like this, they're not listening necessarily to our channels, to Midnight's Edge or to Ron or to Pro or to myself. They're reading this stuff in Forbes magazine. They're reading it in the Wall Street Journal. So that's why it's important to look at what they are saying, because that's what's getting back more often than not to the Vanguards and to the BlackRocks and the American funds and the State Streets and the T. Rowe Prices and all this other kind of places, and the other investors. They're reading this, okay? Most of them are not watching us on YouTube, although maybe more are than not, considering some of the stories that we've done that have gotten out over this year, Pro as well, Midnight's Edge as well. And when we have between 5,000 and 8,000 people show up to watch us cover a Disney earnings call live.
You've made it into a major event.
Yeah, I mean, it might be getting there, but the crew, they're talking about this video, the one we played at the top of the show. Okay, so we saw that one. I want to make men uncomfortable. The video, it's unequivocally absolutely disgusting how certain segments of the Star Wars fan base and even politicians like Ted Cruz are piling on upcoming Star Wars director Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, this time for a quote where she said that she wants to, quote, make men uncomfortable. The video Cruz is sharing from anti-trans crusader Matt Walsh.
This is unbiased.
Totally unbiased. Anti-trans crusader Matt Walsh shows Obaid. Like, what does that have to do with Obaid-Chinoy? Is he trying to say that she might be? Never mind.
Never mind.
Reverse your signal and let him know
she makes it uncomfortable enough
so that the readers know where he stands, but also how he sees the readers. He takes for granted that his readers are going to agree with him. That's the hidden symbolism of writing stuff like this. He's writing for an audience of his peers.
Yes.
I don't even go to a dentist who says they're going to make me uncomfortable, let alone go to something that's supposed to be enjoyable.
It's being characterized as a recent quote about her plan for race-led Star Wars movie. That's not all true. It's really not being characterized. This came back up. We've seen this before. We've talked about this before. This when she was hired, this video came up. What they're missing is that it's tied to her comments on New Year's Eve on CNN, where she said it's time for a woman to be leading Star Wars, which I played earlier. I'll play it again. And it's got Cruz's comments, it's got Matt Walsh's comment. Here's the feminist director of the next Star Wars film saying that her goal is to make men uncomfortable. Movie is destined to be Disney's biggest flop yet. Valiant Renegade says, no lie detected. So I mean, it's not wrong. But of course, in reality, the quote's not even from this decade. It's 8 years old, and the interview is in the context of her award-winning films about honor killings and acid attacks against women in her home and country of Pakistan.
Except that she doesn't say that.
Super relevant to Star Wars fans.
Yeah, well, in the context of
crowd.
Yeah, well, you get the lead up to that was, and I don't want to play the entire thing, but the lead up to that, it was the questions. The host of this, the MC, was Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart was kind of doing a semi-comedy bit saying, I'm, as a man, I'm sorry, basically saying that, yes, men are terrible and all this. That's how this question was prefaced. Now, granted, she was talking about, I get it, her area of the world, but what we've all been saying on this panel, and this audience is well aware, is that the problem politically, especially in the West nowadays, especially in America, Western Europe, and all this kind of stuff, is that the modern, left-leaning person, especially, let's be frank, white liberal women, God help us, but the ones that usually drive all of this, right, that drive this kind of narrative, they believe, I would say most of them honestly believe that the atrocities that happen in Miss Obaid-Chinoy's native part of the world over there in Pakistan that she makes her documentaries about, they believe that that's no different than men here in the United States. They
exactly
do not,
the same.
Yeah, they do not delineate. Because how many times have we made comments about, we see women protesting men and all this kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, would you go protest this in the Middle East? No, because you'd probably be killed. And again, mad respect for Miss Chinoy's documentaries. She has been threatened by the Pakistani Taliban and all this kind of stuff for these things. And I get that. But, I mean, this does not translate to a Western audience. And if you can't separate that part of your work, the activist work that you're doing, that could be argued as being virtuous for that part of the world, considering the atrocities that are committed there, I get it. But that doesn't fit here. And if you're trying to bring
something about her activism there, I think it's just one big virtue signal. I don't think she has made anything any better for anyone. Now, granted, I haven't done detailed study of what she has done and the impact it has had and everything, but just her approach when she says, and of course she says this to all men, but it's obviously geared more towards Pakistani Muslim men of the more extremist persuasion, that when she says, I want to get in your face and annoy you till you change your mind and make you question yourself.
Right.
That's never going to happen. That's never, ever gonna happen. Psychology doesn't work like that, especially not when you have a religious component in it. Every single man that she tries that on is going to be more extreme towards the end of it. I mean,
that's like the protests where these Hamas supporters are shutting down bridges.
Exactly.
Are they really trying to change minds? No, what they're doing is pissing out territory.
Yeah.
They're demonstrating, they're flexing. It's a flex.
Yeah.
Look what we can do. Look what we can get away with. Look how much control we have over authority in your country now. Live it or live with it.
Yeah. And here's the thing. For those that didn't agree with those pro-Hamas people in the first place, and they get in your face, they annoy you, they block traffic, are you more or less sympathetic to their point of view?
Exactly.
I think that this woman right here, for all the praise that she gets, I think that those men who may have needed her message are going to be more extreme after having heard it.
It's a fair argument. It is. But I mean, this is what we're dealing with in not only, again, the Hollywood media, but in the financial trades. And just to kind of bring in this section here, because I think this goes to show, again, they know we're talking about this. This is getting out there, and this is driving the narrative in these financial trades even. But now it's being dragged up stripped of context and using the latest anti-woman crusade that has plagued Star Wars for years, already feeding the maw.
Like being punched in the face, and you're part of the anti-fist brigade.
It's funny thing. I haven't seen this playbook used for several years now, but now we are straight back to the classic Hollywood playback of straw manning, ignoring the real complaints completely, substituting their own, which was never used, and going all in on that. No one has had a complaint against her for being a woman. Our complaint is that she's an activist. Of course, they don't say anything about that. And then they misconstrue everything, just distorting reality and truth, which tells me, since we haven't seen this for years now, that they had given up a number of fights, but on this one, they've pulled out all the stops, and the playbook is back again. When we saw this with John Roca, again, this is playbook. I mean, I haven't seen John Roca for years. I kind of forget what he stands for. I can't really say anything about him. I'll say this, that to what respect I ever may have had for him is completely gone now after that thing, because again, it was pure playbook.
We played it earlier.
As for his compadre, he's a genuine scooper. That Jeff Snyder.
Jeff Snyder.
But you know what the best thing he ever did was? You know what that was? The best thing he ever did? He thought that Uwe Boll was joking when he invited him to fight him in the ring. And he went in thinking they were just going to play. Remember when Uwe Boll, the German director, wanted to fight all his critics and opponents? And Jeff Snyder went into the ring with Uwe Boll thinking they were just playing around, and Uwe Boll proceeded to violently kick his ass.
I didn't know anything about that.
Punch in his face. Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
No, look it up.
Is this a Paul Tassi article? Is that what we said?
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you guys, you've heard of white guilt. This man has wiener guilt. Just here to proclaim it.
Oh, he has all the guilt.
Let me finish reading this paragraph, because like I said...
before you do, I just want to say, for all the women out there who want to make me feel uncomfortable, I've got a wiener and gosh darn it, I'm sorry for it.
oh, God.
Put another gay diverse woman in it. Make it more fucking lit.
Okay. Had to get that one in there again. So let's go back to this one. Stripped of context using in the latest anti-woman crusade or anti-women crusade that has plagued Star Wars for years. Already feeding the maw of outrage that YouTubers who make widely watched videos about how her upcoming Rey movie is, quote, doomed because of her feminism. This is the second time in a few weeks an Obaid Chinoy quote has made the rounds in this crowd, with the last one actually about Star Wars itself, albeit willingly misread many times over. There, Obaid Chinoy said, "We're in 2024. This was from the CNN New Year's Eve interview. "We're in 2024. It's about time we have a woman shape a story in a galaxy far, far away. This led men to start listing important female Star Wars characters, but Obaid Chinoy is obviously referring to her being the first female director of any Star Wars movie ever, which is just a fact." It's a fact, but what's the relevance of it? Again, it's like, what is her being a woman? It's about time a woman does this. It's about time a woman does that. All right. Why does that inherently mean that everybody has to go watch it and it's going to be good, especially when that individual, if it's a woman or otherwise, that it's the first ever fill in the blank? Fine. I don't care. But when you're prefacing what you're doing with, it's about time a woman does this. And by the way, I put my politics and my activism into everything that I do, whether it's overt or covert. We played that clip as well. What do you think the reaction's going to be?
When Valiant, you missed out on, I think, on a juicy aspect on that screen.
Go ahead.
Which is just ellipse.
Yeah.
Ellipse. That is the hip way of writing,
Yeah.
That is what all the cool kids do to show how stupid you are.
Yeah.
Well, when you don't have biceps, use an ellipse.
Let me round this out, because like I said, again, I thought this was worth reading. As I've said previously, and again, this is Paul Tassi, Forbes magazine, this discourse is going to be an utter nightmare.
I can't make money off of it, but others can.
And guess why?
She could have just not said it, and then we wouldn't have it.
This is Valiant. This is a call for YouTube to censor. That's what this is.
More or less.
Paul Tassi is saying, "Please, YouTube, please stop the people who disagree with me from having free discourse. I don't like it."
Obaid Chinoy is going to keep delivering completely normal quotes about empowering women.
Oh, yeah, completely. This is what we call normalization of everything she was saying. And It's not a good thing.
Can I quote Bill Murray? This man has no wiener.
Ted Cruz and Matt Walsh and 200 YouTubers and their millions of subscribers are going to lose their minds. Plus, her film is about Rey, the character accused of being a Mary Sue, not earning her place as a powerful Force-using lead for the duration of the new trilogy.
And Paul Tassi, don't get mad at me. Bill Murray said it. He's your target.
She wasn't accused of being a Mary Sue. She was. Objectively, she was. There was no accusal. That's what they wrote.
Well, they like to twist with reality, though. So
yeah. What's ironic is that Obaid Chinoy's quote about making men uncomfortable does stay true today. But instead
Are you uncomfortable, Valiant?
Incredibly.
Ron, you uncomfortable?
Fidgeting.
I'm uncomfortable at my age almost all the time.
Andre, your one of your one side of your bohiney, depending on where you put your wallet, is going to be uncomfortable because of all the money you're going to make off of this. So
yeah,
I'm so sorry that this has happened to you.
I'm incredibly comfortable. I mean, let's see here. The video I published 5 hours ago has nigh on 60,000 views. Yeah, tremendously uncomfortable here. Like, yeah. For the first time, there's some level of excitement for Star Wars again. So yeah,
never has a January gone so poorly for Midnight's Edge.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I'm going to have a video out. If not tomorrow, then Tuesday we'll have one out that's going to be addressing this article and a few other things that we talked about tonight.
Start releasing videos every hour of the day on this thing.
Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with it. If you want to keep dancing around this like we said, straw man argument, fine. But just to clean this up, what's ironic is that Obey Chinoy's quote about making men uncomfortable does stay true today. But instead of confronting men about horrific acid attacks, we have men in quotes. He specifically gets us printed men being made uncomfortable by a ellipsis.
I like how they equate the two.
A woman directing a Star Wars movie starring a woman and talking about it publicly, it's going to be a long few years. Again, I'm sorry, Paul Tassi, but with all due respect.
No respect is due.
Okay, fine. Your read of this situation is, once again, entirely incorrect. Just as it was for John Rocca or Rocha. I'm not apologize if I'm saying his name wrong.
Wait a minute. Are you sure that somebody didn't just misspell Scotty Mendelson's name on this? I'm really starting to wonder.
Scott?
You know it's Scott.
You're writing an article saying that all of our comments are devoid of context, but this entire article in and of itself is devoid of context. And that's
Paul Tassi would never in a million years step into the arena with Valiant Renegade and discuss this, because in 5 minutes he'd be so deconstructed he'd actually stop feeling guilt about his wiener, if there is such one sitting there.
But you have to admit, though, Paul would embarrass the many members of the Valiant Renegade community who are pro acid attack.
God.
And I think that
there's a joke there.
The way the Valiant has been really soft pedaling acid attack ethics, I think is going to come home to roost.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.